I am Zach Girth. I'm a co-founder of StartAbroad. And a bug just flew into my mouth. That was gross. It's the hardest part about living abroad. Bugs in your mouth. Hey everybody, this is Zach from StartAbroad. We have a wonderful community who has opened up to us in incredible ways as we've supported moves internationally. We wanted to reciprocate. We wanted to do the same thing and share a little bit more about ourselves so that you guys can get to know us as well. So today I'll be answering some questions, sharing a little bit more about my experience, and hope you enjoy. I'm Zach Girth. I'm a co-founder of StartAbroad. I live in Nuevo Arenal, Costa Rica. So I've lived in a lot of different places in the US, and I've moved internationally 6 times. So obviously I'm from the US. I've lived in the Dominican Republic. I was in the Peace Corps there. I lived in Uruguay, Kenya, Rwanda, and now Costa Rica. When I was younger, I was fortunate enough to experience international travel. Fell in love with it. I think being outside of my comfort zone really forces you to understand different perspectives, and because you're outside of your comfort zone, you have to grow a lot and really understand yourself, and I was always attracted to that. And then over time, after the Peace Corps, I realized I wanted to continue to work in international development, helping people kind of improve their own situations. And so I pursued a career in international development, and that has kind of taken me all over the world. Great question. So when we decided to launch StartAbroad, we had been living in East Africa, and our primary clientele for StartAbroad were going to be Americans and Canadians. So we wanted to be on US time zones, which also had the added benefit of just being a lot closer to home, to friends and family. When you live in East Africa, you're just 40-hour travel day away, and time zones are very different. So we knew we wanted to be on US and Canadian time zones, and our clientele were moving to Costa Rica, Panama, Portugal, so we wanted to live in one of those countries. We had wanted to live in a country that speaks Spanish because I used to speak Spanish, and I really value speaking the language in the country I'm living in. So we were looking at a few different countries in Central South America, and then for my partner, just safety security was kind of the number one priority, and so Costa Rica made a lot of sense at that point. In terms of why Nuevo Arenal, when we first got to Costa Rica, we drove around the country for a month to check out different towns we might want to live in. We assumed we were going to end up down on the beach, but for us, the beach turned out to be hot and a little more expensive than we could afford. And we came up to Nuevo Arenal, and it was green and beautiful, and the community was really welcoming, and it's a small town, and we just fell in love. There's a lot of things I really like about living abroad. I think kind of just the sense of adventure is one of them. I think living very closely with people who have very different kind of cultural attitudes and perspectives than you constantly forces you to reevaluate. Right now we work a lot with StartAbroad, and the backdrop though, when I go outside, is toucans, and there's oropendolas, and there's a beautiful lake, and it's the jungle. So there's a lot I love about living abroad. The hardest part about living abroad is, I think, there's 2 things. One is a lot of your friends and family are back in the US, and so there's some distance. Even though we have a lot of visitors, which is great, and we go visit people, and communication is really easy. You're just not as close as you would be if you lived in the US. The second thing is, when you move abroad, you have to adapt to the country you're moving to. And things work very differently in different countries. So we live in Costa Rica, the level of bureaucracy, I think efficiency of systems is not prioritized in the way that it is in the US. And that can be very frustrating for an American or Canadian because we're used to things getting done, and we're used to business relationships. And so I think especially for the first 6 to 8 months of moving to a new country, you don't really understand how those systems are going to affect you. And then as they affect you, it can be very frustrating to have to adapt to it. Best piece of advice I could give to my younger self. Okay, so it depends. If it's a younger Zach, like 23, it's don't take yourself too seriously. You're going to look silly at various points when you move to a new country, and that is fine. And the process is going to be a lot smoother for you if you're willing to laugh at yourself. In terms of myself now, I think when I was younger, I was just super flexible about everything. I think if you're talking about me now, what advice I would give myself maybe before we made this move to Costa Rica, it's maybe don't be so dogmatic about what you think you need. You don't know what you don't know before you make the move. And each country and each town and how you respond to that town, depending on your time of life, it's going to be very different. And so even though you have in your head like, hey, I need this is what I'm looking for, that's not always true. And so be flexible in the beginning when you get to a new place. Keep your mind open, because you might realize that the preconceived notions you had before you made the move don't necessarily align with what you realize you want or what you're looking for in that specific place. The number one piece of advice I would give to somebody relocating is do it. There's a lot of reasons that it can be difficult to do. There's a lot of very valid reasons, and there's a lot of reasons that we construct because it is a big, scary leap. If you were to move down the street in your hometown in the US or Canada, it'd be really hard. Moving is very hard. It's one of the hardest things for people to do. Moving internationally is 10 times more challenging. And so you might think, oh, I can't do it. I would love to, I have this dream, but I just can't do it. But the truth is you can. And the US and Canada will always be there if you want to go back. And so I would say take the first step. And the first step always is to visit. Never make an investment before you've gone to the country and spent considerable time there and made sure it's right for you. A lot of people make that mistake. They say, oh, I want to live on a beach in Panama. And they buy an expensive home. And then they go to Panama and they're like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. So go spend time in the country. If it's for you, connect with expat communities or with a professional relocator to figure out actually how to make it happen. Long story short is just go. And if you want to do it, there are people who can help you figure it out, including StartAbroad.